students of Reddit. What's your well that happened moment in the classroom? When I fell asleep in the first row, and the professor and the other students started clapping to wake me up, and when I woke up I also started clapping like a moron. Was walking to the bathroom. Some of the special needs kids were on their way to recess. One of the girls then screams, "Bathroom," and proceeds to pull down her pants and shove the floor. Another time was when I was outside, walking towards the playground. Everyone started running back towards the buildings. We were being forced back because someone pooped on the walkway. IDK, what is wrong with my school and poop? Guy with anger issues started yelling at the teacher and then slapped her across the face. Keep in mind this fat kid was huge and the teacher was this old tiny Asian woman. The nicest guy in the class smokes the guy with a sucker right hand and just puts the guy out cold. In high school physics, we were waiting for the teacher to show up, and another physics teacher from another class comes in with a bowling ball and says, "Do you guys think I can dribble this?" Everyone just kinda looks at him incredulously, and he begins to repeatedly and heavily strong arm the bowling ball into the floor hard enough for it to rebound high enough that he can keep the momentum going. People start to laugh, but then after about 5 or 6 bounces, the ball splits in half as it hits the floor. He quickly scoops up the halves, holds a conspiratorial finger to his lips, and shuffles out the door. About 15 seconds later, our physics teacher comes in, looks at the few dusty chips of bowling ball on the floor, and asks, "What was all that noise? What's this mess on the floor?" In a full auditorium, a random guy from a higher year entered. He yelled, "Ladies, this one's for you," and then proceeded to take off his shirt and trousers, his boxers still on luckily. He then flexed his biceps and did different poses in front of hundreds of students sitting there not knowing how to react. He then left, saying, "Sorry to bother you," to the lecturer. Oh well. Apparently he bet with his friends to do this for 3 troughs of strong beer. I was in a college class last semester. I'm in my early 30s, so I definitely wasn't the youngest student, but I wasn't the oldest either. There was a guy in his 60s in the class too. All semester he was super serious and studious. He always did like thrice the amount of work expected. He wrote a 15-page report when all that was expected was like 5. Finals rolls around and during the test our professor steps out of the class for a minute. As soon as she's gone, old dude gets up and starts asking people for answers on the test. It's always the person you least expect. TLDR, old people cheat on tests too. First day of school. Freshman year in woodshop. Teacher just finishes showing us a safety video on proper use of how to use a table saw. Then he was about to give a demonstration and said, "Now, you're going to see me do things a little differently than how you just saw it being done in the video you just watched. But that's because I'm a professional and have been doing this for over 30 years. Teacher then proceeded to immediately cut off 3 of his fingers with the saw at the front of the classroom. Blood was spraying everywhere. He was screaming, holding his hand. Guys I was with in the back of the class starting laughing thinking it was a prank. Girl in the front of the class projectile vomited. A few of us helped him find his fingers on the floor. Went and got the nurse. Someone called an ambulance. They were able to reattach them at the hospital. Wood class was cancelled for the rest of the year, and we all took home economics in its place. 9th grade for reference. Everyone was being super loud, so we were pretty much unable to discern anything short of our own table. Just as the teacher is coming in and everyone is quieting down, this one kid is just loudly talking and telling this one girl who looks really effing uncomfortable it's 4 inches with the most proud voice ever. Not in classroom, but kid fell out of the restroom ceiling and broke the whole ceiling. And in a classroom someone got thrown across the room into a wall. Not a student anymore, but we had a supply English teacher that had the good old habit of liking a little drink in the classroom. He used to pull a small bottle of vodka out of the drawer and take a small sip every few minutes while trying to be sly about it. Well, after a while one of the students told a teacher about it, and then the supply teacher was found on his lunch break watching Netflix and drinking a glass of wine in the classroom. Funny thing is he stayed on as a teacher for another 3 months before being totally kicked out for a similar thing. Okay, so this happened a while ago, so I might not have all the details. So I was on the school bus and we weren't allowed to eat on the bus. So the kids behind me were talking about lunch tomorrow and one of them said, yeah, I can bring bacon. I was hungry, so I said, bacon? Who's bringing bacon? The bus driver overheard me, but didn't know it was me. Stopped the bus and yelled, bacon. Who has bacon, dart? Then he walked down the aisle and looked to see who has bacon. It was so funny, but you kinda had to be there. In first grade, this kid climbed on top of a bookshelf and screamed the Superman theme song before declaring he was Superman. The then proceeds to jump off the bookshelf and collides with another kid. We were all doing some like test thing, then a student got up, ripped it up, screamed F this, then threw a chair at a teacher. Proceeded to them say the teacher bullied her for the whole year. I remember being maybe in second grade and this one kid in our class kept yelling "Shh" through the window at some 10th 11th grader that was outside. Our window was easy to climb in and out of as it wasn't placed at a high level from the ground. The dude that was standing outside got annoyed with him, I guess, and just jumped on the window sill, which was pretty wide, and said something along the lines of, "You kids should not be saying things like this. I'm older and won't do anything, but someone in this life will at some point if you keep this behavior." Then went back to his friends or whatever like nothing out of the ordinary happened. Our whole class of second graders was shocked. I know it would have been more interesting if I remember the details, but it happened a long time ago. I'm sorry if this isn't perfect English since it isn't my first language. This actually happened today XD. So I was in math class and we were doing something and I was bored a bit, so I started playing with my slipper and the teacher thought it was a calculator and said that I have to bring it to her. I said, "This isn't a. Don't you back talk to me." She screamed at me, so I just gave it to her. At the end of the period I asked if I can get my slipper back. She was confused and looked at the calculator and apologized. At the end of the day we all had a good laugh. Someone asked meth, "Can we cook it in chemistry?" Another person asked our math teacher who was going home to Canada over break if she could go threaten to kill his friend who lives there. Same person told the same teacher that he couldn't do the work because he has 100 extra chromosomes. He doesn't. She responded by saying, "That explains why you look like that." Had a girl storm out of class, made a big scene about it, can't remember what it was about, as she was about to beat her from the door. She tripped and went head first into the door. Most of us was too stunned to do anything. Good thing the teacher was on the ball and got her to the nurse's office. The classic, teacher watching PRN with the beamer still on. Fat kid comes into science class in the morning not looking too good. Substitute teacher doesn't care even when we tell her that he is literally going blue. Eventually he throws up on the floor and the teacher goes to him to help. He covers his mouth with his coat so he doesn't throw up on her. He throws up and his vomit goes down his jacket sleeve and gets dumped on her shoes. Substitute teacher walks out of schools with a trail of vomit footprints and says nothing. Grade 10 or 11. Can't remember. I was a slacker, but got along great with all my teachers. I like to push my luck to see how far I could go with my bullsh. In math class there was a no drink policy, but I usually had a bottle of pop in there anyways. One day after finishing it, sitting at the back of the class, I tossed the bottle clear across the room and got it cleanly into the trash can. The teacher stops, looks at me and says, "Bet you can't do that again." I did. So he grabs it, goes further back, and lands it. I put my back against the far wall and toss it, landing it again. He takes it at the same range and does a little spin first, landing it. At this point I needed to shut him down. It had gone on long enough. I grab it out of the can, start walking towards him making fierce eye contact and toss it over my shoulder. The class loses their goddamn minds. It was another clean shot. The teacher just nods and sits back down at his desk. 12/10. Could never replicate ever again. I walked into school after being gone for a day and I saw the front desk broken perfectly in two. Apparently the biggest kid in my grade, a kid named Fisher, had sat on the desk and broken it. At my school we sometimes have drug dogs come and check the lockers. They always announce it like teachers. Please do not let students leave the classroom for the next bit of time. Everyone knows what it means, and one kid in my class grabbed his bag and jumped over 3 desks and ran out the classroom. Turns out he was an entrepreneur of sorts.